Hello, my name is Marcus Ruiz-Evans with Yes California. I'd like to talk today about the topic of quick negotiations. What if all of a sudden California has to secede? The climate's right, all the players agreed, it's going to happen, and you got to do it in 48 hours. Now that seems a little silly because we've talked about independence movements taking years and going through votes and etc. And that is the typical way that things happen. But a lot of people in California look across the Rockies at America and they see a failing government. They see schizophrenia. And they seem open to their California leadership taking dramatic moves quickly without little explanation at all and just doing it. The California announcing a pact with Oregon and Washington that would defy federal directions on the economy and come up with its own regulations on when the economy should be opening up is a perfect example. That was huge. Direct defiance of federal authority. A pact announced out of nowhere. There had been West Coast pacts, but that sort of announcement of that pact dedicated to this and what they were doing was new. It was extreme. So we are in a climate where the governments are failing, people have a loss of confidence in government systems, and they're open to radical solutions, and they're open to radical change quickly. People are also talking about maybe we got through coronavirus, but what if there's another pandemic? What if there's the second wave that comes through? If the federal government almost fell apart with the first wave and the second wave is supposed to be more deadly, we may be facing a time where secession happens like that. If that's the case, here's some advice. Not taking a hard stance, but yes, California has been looking into this. This is our recommendation if Governor Newsom or others had to secede within a few hours, if that happened. So, number one, we want to point out that there's only one study on peaceful secession. How do peaceful secessions happen? Political Economic Research Group, Western Ontario University by Robert Young in 1994. Now, what Robert Young found at the University of Ontario in 1994 was that peaceful independence movements, meaning people had a vote, there's some sort of negotiation, they didn't get their gun and start shooting their way out, typically have a pattern, almost all of them. So if you have a vote and you're peacefully seceding through some sort of regulatory process or settled negotiations, typically you follow a pattern. That's what this researcher said. This is the only study on peaceful research, on peaceful secession movements. And he came to two conclusions. Number one, peaceful secession movements are over and done with quickly. They take 3 years tops. 3 years from start of idea to all the way broken off independent nation. 3 years. 3 years only. The reason that he said that was the second conclusion, that in peaceful secessions, because they're held by a vote and they're in governments with democratically elected leaders, those politicians have to fulfill the agreement to have that country secede before they are up for re-election. So your prime minister, your president, your governor, your area has a vote, it's peaceful, they want to secede, you have to make that happen or you lose being kicked out of office altogether. That's what Robert Young said in his research. Now, I want to point something out. Let's take a look at Brexit. Brexit was officially activated in March 2017. March 2017, England activated certain articles in the EU Constitution to allow them to withdraw. So March 2017, England officially started the, yes, we want to leave Europe. By January 2020, everything was signed and they were officially independent. That is 2 months shy of 3 years. Research professor comes out, 1994, with a study. Independence movements peacefully done, take 3 years tops. Brexit happens 20 years later, 2 decades later. Real world case study of this researcher's hypothesis, and it perfectly matches. He said peaceful secession movements happen in 3 years. Brexit happened within 3 years minus 2 months. He said politicians have to do this or they're going to be at risk of being removed. Well, that's exactly what happened with Brexit. So Theresa May was in charge of the Brexit negotiations on March 2019. She was completely removed by July 2019. So Theresa May said, hey, I want to do elongating the negotiation on Brexit. She took that to the English people. She was removed from office within 4 months. That backs up this thesis. So you look at Brexit, you look at the study, it says politicians will have to negotiate quickly for fear of losing office, and total 3 years tops. Now let's get to the second part. California can do this. So just a couple examples of who we are. In 1989, the Esalen Institute bridged America and the Soviet Union. So glasnost, the melting of the Cold War, the bringing of two empires together happened because of a bunch of Californians at the Esalen Institute. It was called the Encounter Group. They were the first ones saying, let's have Soviet people and Americans talk in friendship. They started that in 1979. By 1989, this group of exclusively Californians brought down the Cold War, created glasnost. That was Californians sticking their nose in international policy, doing negotiations, and having historic wins. 1989, we did that. Let's fast forward to 1994. Now, the World Trade Organization is the body that has every nation in it agreeing on how to do international trade. We have more international trade than we've ever had. That's because of the World Trade Organization. Now, before the WTO, there was something called the GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. It was the precursor to the WTO. The only reason they had the WTO was because they saw the GATT, created by America, which was a world trade deal to get America to have open world trade with everybody. So 1994, America says, we're going to start having a global trade regime, working, negotiating with everybody to have world trade, and they called it GATT. Guess whose idea that was? California. So America only did world trade because California asked them to, and California pushed them to join the GATT, and California advised them how to do negotiations. So the first World Trade Organization America signed on to was invented by Californians, pushed by Californians, and all of the technical advice on how to do that came from Californians. It's called the GATT, preceded the WTO. America never did it if Californians didn't push them, 1994. Let's move forward to 2009. Now, on September 30th, 2009, Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations said that California did so great getting the entire planet to move on climate change when the United Nations couldn't do it, that the UN was asking California to continue all global negotiations on moving the world forward on climate change. So here's climate change, world discussion issue. The United Nations, the place to do this, says, California, we couldn't get the world moving on climate change. You did all by yourself. You did such a good job. We want you to continue the global discussion on our behalf. And they asked them to do that September 30th, 2009. Seems like a pretty big vote by a global negotiation body that we can do that kind of thing. Let's fast forward to 2015, May 2015. The Under 2 MOU, May 2015, became called the Alliance, the Under 2 Coalition. So what this was Donald Trump got elected in 2016. Donald Trump said, America doesn't believe in climate change. We're pulling out of the only agreement America ever signed on climate change called the Paris Agreement. California says, oh yeah? Well, then we're going to form a coalition of states and regions and other countries to say that we do support climate change. So the federal government says we're pulling out of agreements on climate change. California says, okay, I'm going to get a collection of states, some of which voted for you, Trump, 4 nations, and form my own international coalition that I will rename the Under 2 Coalition in 2017. That coalition, created by California in opposition to the federal government wishes, meaning California did it with no federal assistance because it was in opposition to them, remember, 2017, was able to get 43% of the global economy and 1.3 billion humans to agree to it. So, federal government says, we're not part of climate change coalitions. California says, oh yeah, I'm going to do my own international coalition with nations and states in 2017 in opposition to you. And they're so successful to get 43% of the global GDP to sign on. Glasnost, 1984. World trade was pushed by California. That's the only reason America did it in 1994. 1989, Glasnost, 1994, world trade pushed by California. 2009, the UN says, you're better than us at global negotiations. 2015, in direct opposition to the federal government, California gets a coalition that almost includes half of the global value of money. So, when you look at that, it's clear that California can do international negotiations really well. And that people like the American government and the UN say, wow, you did such a good job, you told us what to do. Now, remember that, okay? We're going to go to part 2 now. Donald Trump says, I'm willing to deal, or somehow California needs to become independent quickly. Now, looking at all the critiques that the Cal-Exit movement has had talking with Americans, from 2015 to 2020. So over the last 5 years, looking at every conversation anyone in Cal-Exit has ever had with Americans about how we can secede, these were the top 3 issues that Americans always said. So top 3 issues Americans always said whenever the topic of California independence came up over the last 5 years. And it goes like this. America will want to cut off the Colorado River to California. America will want to secure all the military bases, and America will want to secure access to the ports. My opinion is, Governor Newsom, give it to him. Say publicly that California, if there was an agreement to secede, would agree that the U.S. military can cut off the Colorado River to California. They can keep all the Colorado River water. They can keep all of the U.S. military bases on the coast as a lease, and they can keep access to the ports by current tonnage, meaning the amount of tons of goods that they're able to pull out of California ports, drive through, or put on trains through California to America. California agrees that that amount of tonnage will always be available to America at our ports and through our roads out. What that also means is that if we improve the amount of goods that come into those ports, we don't have to pass on that efficiency to America. So America gets 43 tons of goods or something like that every year. California says, okay, we promise you 43. But we've improved our port capacity so we can bring in 3 times that amount. That doesn't mean we have to allow 3 times more goods for America. We're going to keep our commitment. So America, you can keep the Colorado River, you can keep the military bases, you can keep existing tonnage to the ports and access on the roads and railways out. Give it to them. Those are the top 3 sticking points. If you just say, sure, have it, Americans, you're going to find Governor Newsom or whoever has to do this quick negotiation, you've just gotten rid of 60-80% of the difficulties right there. Just wiped clean, because those are the 3 big sticking points. Give them what they want. Now, here's the other issues. There's a lot of federal infrastructure here. There's a lot of federal land. There's a lot of federal debt. So also California was a donor state. So here's the next part. Make it real quick and easy. California will keep all the federal infrastructure. We will keep all of the federal land. Federal government doesn't have to maintain it. We'll take it over. We will take on 25% of the federal debt. Now, California's percentage of the population is about 14%. We're taking on almost double the amount of the debt, which means we're giving a really good deal to America. Hey, we only have to take on 13, 14% of the debt. We're taking on a quarter of the debt. You let California leave, You can keep the water from the Colorado River, you can keep your port access, you can keep your military bases, and you just knocked off 25% of the debt. And all you had to do was give up some land and some buildings. Also, to sweeten it, I would give the federal government all existing active mines rights of access to those mineral deposits. So in all of the federal land, all of the existing mines that are active and they're pulling things out of, the federal government still has access to those mines, and anything they pull out of them they can take. However, any new mine or any plot of land that even they surveyed, if they're not doing anything with it, that's Californians. So you see what we're doing here? We're trying to limit the cost. You can keep the bases, you can keep your existing mineral deposits, you can keep your access to the ports, but any improvements we make on the land or to the ports, we keep that. You don't get that. This will eliminate so many debate obstacles if California has to negotiate quickly. Just, you keep the Colorado River, you keep the military bases, you keep the existing access by tonnage to the ports. We'll take off 25% of the debt, and we keep all federal land and federal infrastructure. You start negotiating these things, it's going to go forever. You just say, here, yours, your problem, yours, your problem. You're moving past all the big difficulties real fast. You're getting right to the tiny, finite issues. And I want to point out, and then the other thing I would say is freeze all trade deals. So say California and America are going to keep all the same trade deals they have right now. Nothing will change, and there will be no talk about modifying those trade deals until after the independence movement. So Brexit did this, okay, reluctantly. Brexit tried to negotiate the trade deals before they even started the formal negotiation. So around June 2016 to January 2017, England was trying to get access to the European single market while seceding or leaving. And they spent 9 months, almost a year, trying to back-channel work out with Europe on the trade deals. And finally, Europe got upset and said, we're not talking to you about anything until you actually start the process of withdrawing. And so England wasted 9 months trying to get a trade deal in, got nothing, and then had to start over from square one, actually starting the negotiation process, which then did take 3 years. Now they're looking into trade. Don't make the same mistake. Trade is complex. Don't do it at the same time. Tell businesses, hey, everything stays the same for the next 3 years. While we negotiate California leaving, nothing happens. You sell refrigerator parts to someone in Kentucky, keep doing it. Pay the same taxes, same fees, nothing changes. After California is independent, then you will negotiate trade deals, but you'll do it one by one. So Brexit was trying to do everything, computer parts to grapes. You allow California to become independent, and then issue by issue, grapes, refrigerator parts, you negotiate that one issue. You take as long as you need. And until you have a new term for grape sales between California and America agreed out, the old term stays in place. So businesses don't have to worry about shock. Everything stays in place. If there is a change, it'll be very specific. They'll be watching it. They'll see it coming 3 years ahead of time, and they'll be part of the negotiations. And nothing changes unless they agree to it. That's how you secure the economy, don't cause a financial crisis, and focus on the big issues that are sticking points in the negotiation and get it done quickly. Don't make the mistake Brexit did. They tried to do trade and then say the whole agreement. Europe just got upset. They wasted 9 months. They got nothing for it. They eventually had to do what Europe said, which is we're going to negotiate everything else in the divorce proceedings before we get to trade negotiation. Don't make the same mistake. Do trade after. Make that your agreement. So, here's how you should approach the PACT. I would suggest that Governor Newsom or the California government announce publicly, almost daydreaming, get a columnist to write it. Say it offhanded in an interview. Say a couple interviews. Say different people talking about it. Say a couple columnists, whatever. Just get the idea out there informally. Here's the terms California would agree to secede. Boom, 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 boom. Just saying, putting it out there. You don't want to broadcast it directly to Trump because that puts him on the spot. Now he has to make a deal. Trump likes to think of himself as a master deal maker, and he likes to pop up on the scene with a radical, bold idea no one was thinking about. Give him the win. Give him the win. Let him feed himself that way. You generally broadcast the terms that you would agree to. You generally put it out there. And then you let other people say to Trump, hey, this is a good idea. You know, Fox News is Trump's information source. Kurt Schlichter, Judge Napolitano, and Mr. Stein on Fox News over the last few years have been saying California already wants to secede or cut them loose. Additionally, Wayne Allen Root, who was commended by Donald, Sean Spicer, his former press secretary, and Francis Buckley, his former speechwriter, all said California should secede. So you already have Fox News saying that. You already have people connected to Trump saying that. Just put the idea out there in general. Don't put him on the spot. Put it out there. His people will sell him on it. And then he will appear to himself as to have done it all by himself and just come up with a bold solution. I agree to this agreement for California to secede here. Feed his ego. Let him win. You want out. His people will sell him on it. Fox News will sell him on it. They will. They've already been pursuing this idea. Okay, now down to the last part. I would suggest California form a pact with Washington and Oregon, and maybe Hawaii and Nevada, and nobody else, in a loose association as a way to successfully secede. So, some people say California should bring every blue state in. Some people say California should go it alone. I have gradually come to see the wisdom of California entering into a small pact on a few issues in order to secure its independence. And I think it will be okay for California nationalists to support this for this reason. If California links up with Washington and Oregon, it immediately places the entire West Coast to connect to two countries, Canada and Mexico. So immediately you have this new government saying, we're already connected with borders with two different independent nations. You bring in Hawaii and Nevada, it doesn't go against that, it still works. Also, this region is already geographically connected, and that means transportation connected. The Rocky Mountains are a barrier. It's really hard to get across them. Because of that, the roads, the railway lines, everything's easy connected between Oregon, Washington, California, and then Las Vegas and Reno out of Nevada. Hawaii's an island, it's already isolated, but plane flights already come from Hawaii to California. So Washington and Oregon and California already are geographically aligned and transportation aligned. It's easy to control access to it because the geography and the transportation grid already create that. Las Vegas could easily be hooked into that, and so could Hawaii. So you have a cohesive whole there that's easy to control. Also, all those places are politically left, hardcore left. Hawaii, Las Vegas, Washington, Oregon, it's not an issue. Also, we could secure water to California. Now, I said give up the Colorado River. Here's why. Colorado River is going to be gone. Bureau of Reclamation and many climate change experts have said climate change is going to wipe that river out. So California, you can't rely on the Colorado River anyways. It's going to be gone. Big people already saying that. And they're saying, look for something else. Now, what's interesting is that in 2012, sorry, it's warm. 2012, the Federal Bureau of Land Reclamation created a paper where they studied the feasibility of shipping water from the Columbia River at the border of Oregon and Washington by sea tanker to California. So, Federal Bureau of Land Management did a study, 2012. Could you ship fresh water from the river Oregon and Washington share directly to Los Angeles on ocean tanker? Yes, you can. They could deliver 600,000 acre feet in 1 year for a cost of $2,900, roughly $3K, $2,900 per acre feet to deliver this. Times 600,000 means for a cost of $1.7 billion, California could ship water from Oregon and Washington directly to Los Angeles. Now, when you look at the LA Department of Water and Power, In 2018, they used 522,000 acre feet, which is less than the amount that would be shipped under this plan. LA County used a total of 1.5 million acre feet in total. Now here's the thing, LA County recycles a lot of that water. So these aren't exact numbers, but somewhere between 522,000 to 1.5 million acre feet needs to be supplied to LA if you cut them off from the Colorado River. The Federal Bureau in 2012 said you could start that up instantly for the price of $1.7 billion to do 600,000 acre feet. If you need more, you're looking at maybe $3 billion. So $1.7 to $3 billion, California tomorrow could start shipping fresh water from Oregon and Washington to LA and supply all our water needs. Done. Now 1.3 may sound a lot, but it cost California about $1.7 billion to build one desalination plant, and it took 20 years. The other thing is the Bureau of Land Reclamation also talks about an undersea pipeline that could ship water from Oregon to Washington, probably available in 20 years. There was also William Shatner, Star Trek, who suggested you could build an overland pipeline from Washington into California. But again, the moment you start building infrastructure, environmental regulations, land reviews, you're going to be doing so much paperwork for so long, it'll be 10 years before you see a drop. Already have port capacity now. Already have ships. You could ship the water tomorrow. Don't need to do any environmental review. Just do it. Also, this document in 2012 said 600,000 acre feet in 1 year to LA is only because of LA infrastructure, meaning you could ship more if LA was able to absorb more. So LA can take 600,000 feet by ships now. If you build infrastructure, it could take even more. We can supply all the water they need with Oregon and Washington alone by ocean-going tanker. We have massive ports with massive tankers already. We are the place that can handle tankers. Already ready, set to go. And we can do that if we go with Oregon and Washington. And maybe also bring Nevada and Hawaii. Now here's the other thing. If you're able to say Washington and Oregon with California, and especially if you're able to throw in Las Vegas and Hawaii in there, you will announce to the entire world you have the entire West Coast. And if with Hawaii, that goes damn near out to halfway through the Pacific. So you would be telling the Asian markets, hey, you have to take us seriously because we control the entire West Coast. That gets you international recognition. As we've talked about, if you want to be independent, you have to have international recognition. It's hard to do. You get a couple of those states together, control the entire West Coast, the planet will see that, and you'll get international recognition because countries will want to give it to you so that you trade with them easily. They're going to want access to the West Coast ports to get into Latin America and Canada. They're going to want that access, and they're going to know they need to be kind to you to get that access, and you're in a position of power. That's going to force countries to, on their own, internationally recognize this new group. California alone could probably get international recognition. With a West Coast Pact, it's definitely easier. Just is. Doesn't mean California couldn't do it on its own, but it increases the chances, especially because you just own the entire West Coast. The entire planet's going to see that. When the Washington, Oregon, California Pact was announced, the entire planet talked about that. Just saying. The other thing is that if you get Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, Las Vegas with you, you have 5 states. That means 10 senators, 5 attorneys general. That gives you a lot of power in Congress. You could immediately force the discussion in Congress if you have 10 senators and a bunch of representatives. You could automatically get Congress to start talking about let these people secede. Additionally, if you have that many states, it kills the whole you want to destroy America, you're secretly a Russian spy, you hate the U.S. You get a bunch of states saying we're seceding together. It says this isn't about patriotism. This is about functional government. We can't all be unpatriotic. Everybody's coming together out of necessity. So it eliminates that unpatriotic, you hate America vibe that Calexit has had to deal with. It also says to the world, you're committed to a legal pathway because you brought on 5 states and you're debating in the Senate and you're debating with attorney generals, suing the government, etc. So you get that legitimacy of being patriots who are reluctantly leaving, and you get that legitimacy of being committed to peaceful negotiations. California on its own could get that, but it would be harder. It would be harder to force America to listen. It would be harder to get conservatives to have a more fair opinion of California, given how radical we are to, California's constantly protested every war America had. So we already have this anti-USA vibe. We bring another couple states in, it softens that. That really helps out PR-wise, which is key, because if we legally want to secede, we have to get permission from the states. Now, I think that could be a simple 51% vote. Some people say 2/3. You have a coalition of 5 states doing this, arguing in Congress, attorneys general signing things together, international recognition already happening. It's really going to encourage the rest of America to take this seriously, to take it legitimately, and to therefore be in a place that they're closer to being willing to give those votes to legally secede. Just international recognition and getting the votes is more likely with a pact than California alone, although California could do it by itself. The other thing is that if you're going to say to the federal government, we'll take on 25% of the debt, then having these states join with you is easier. California is about 14.6% of the GDP. With these other states, it goes up to 19.9% GDP. So 14.6% GDP on our own to 19.9% GDP with Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, and Nevada along with CA. That makes it where it's not as a large financial burden to cover 25% of the debt, but you still get that awesome idea of selling Americans on, you just canceled 25% of your debt. Plus, you take the entire West Coast, Hawaii, and Las Vegas, you're getting rid of even more liberals. Trump and Republicans would view this as a dream. They get rid of so many liberals, and they get rid of 25% of the debt, and they make that deal happen quick. That's why I'm saying sign a pact, or think about a pact, or broadcast the terms, Governor Newsom, that these are the states that would leave with you, and they all agree to these terms. Broadcast them publicly, and you will get legitimacy from Trump and the Republicans taking this seriously. They would be emphatic about getting rid of the debt and so many liberals, and the fact that you brought on many states makes it legal and not against America to do. So a lot of issues are just being knocked out and lined up, making it easy for quick negotiation. Okay. Also, this is key. Folks, in the future, about 10 years from now, 2/3 of the global economy is going to be in Asia. 2/3 of the global economy will be in Asia in about 10 years. America and Europe are not going to be the global dominant superpowers. Won't happen. It's going to be China, Southeast Asia, and then India between 2040 to